WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Praia. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Senegal braces for protests as civil society opposes controversial amnesty bill impacting political demonstrations.
We will just take this opportunity to make a call for action to all the members of opposition to reject this bill in behalf of Senegalese population.
Guinea's interim president, General Doumbouya, announces new government structure. United Nations calls on Malian authority to ensure accountability amidst escalating human rights concerns.
In Mali, the human rights situation remains very worrying, with violations and abuses almost doubling in 2023 compared to 2022.
And in Ghana, criticism trails Finance Ministry's stance on human, sexual and family values bill.
Let's use this to signal that we can be independent when it comes to managing our economy. We may not need their resources. Even at all, go into the 2024 budget and then look at the grants that we are targeted. It's just about 3.3% of our GDP.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Liberia and Ghana. But let's begin in Senegal, where civil society organizations and human rights groups are gearing up to protest the amnesty bill, which is currently being debated in a plenary session at the National Assembly today. The proposed legislation encompasses all acts that may be classified as a criminal or correctional offense committed between February 1, 2021 and February 25, 2024, both in Senegal and abroad, relating to demonstrations or having political motivations, including those made by any communication media, whether or not the perpetrators have been tried. However, expressing dissent, Abdoulaye Wade, a member of a collective who lost his brother during the demonstrations, affirms that they are prepared to stage protests against the bill over the weekend.
We don't agree with this bill. We can forgive. But first, the truth. My little brother was murdered on March 8, 2021. I filed a complaint against the commander of the police department in March 2021. The judge didn't call me, nor the prosecutor. I'm listening to the trial, and I don't intend to withdraw the complaint. I will pursue it until the end. We are going to organize a Quran recital for the victims on Saturday, 9 o'clock in the morning. After that, in the evening, we will try to organize a peaceful march organized by the Amnesty and the members of the victims' families. We want to start at 3 p.m. to denounce this law of amnesty. We want to start at 3 p.m. to denounce this law of amnesty, to tell everyone that we, the families of the victims of March 1, 2021, do not agree with the amnesty bill.
The debate is being debated at the National Assembly, and we will bring you updates on our briefs and subsequent bulletins. Meanwhile, the leader of an opposition coalition, Barrister Musa Diop, was provisionally released on Tuesday after more than 2 months in detention for insulting the head of state. According to his lawyer, Musa Sarr, the opposition benefited from a provisional release accompanied by judicial supervision. Lawyer Musa Diop was a former official of the presidential party and later cross-carpeted to the opposition as a head of a political coalition. Last year, Diop had announced his candidacy for the presidential election, but is not among the 19 contenders selected for this election, initially scheduled for February 25 and postponed indefinitely on February 3. He was imprisoned on December 10 after making allegations denied by the authorities about diamond exploration involving, according to him, President Macky Sall. He had mentioned the issuance of a diamond exploration authorization in the northern region of the country to a famous industrialist and implicated a former Minister of Mines, Ali Ngouille Ndiaye, presidential candidate. Both had also denied these allegations. Well, let's cross over now to Liberia, where lawmakers on Tuesday approved a resolution aimed at putting an end to the culture of impunity by the creation of the Economic and War Crimes Court in the country. This means pursuing legal action against those primarily responsible for the decade-long civil war that concluded in 2003. Recall Liberia's devastating civil conflict spanning from 1989 to 2003 was characterized by pervasive human rights violations, including rape, torture, and extrajudicial killings. From Monrovia, WADR's Ellington Popper reports.
Chanting, "We want justice, we want justice." The over 40 lawmakers who signed the resolution called on President Joseph Boakai to work with the United Nations, international partners, institutions, and civil society organizations for assisting in establishing an extraordinary criminal court in Liberia and ensure warlords and their financiers are held accountable. Midre Sen is the chief clerk at the House of Representatives. She raised the resolution.
In support for full implementation of the TRC recommendations, including the establishment of an extraordinary criminal court in Liberia, and commits to working with President Joseph Boakai for the court's establishment.
Musa Hassan Belete and other lawmakers who hailed from the region of dreadful warlord Prince Johnson justify why they refuse to sign the document.
We must make sure that there are no legal loopholes that will put a damper in the work when it starts. So giving us at least 1 week to review this document so that everything that concerns us can be incorporated into it, and so that the work of previous legislation that have been passed on this issue can also be incorporated.
Despite their justification, Speaker Fonati Kofa insists that the document be forwarded to the Liberian Senate for concurrence.
The chair has the floor. The resolution has passed and is going to the Liberian Senate. You can disagree all you want. Justice for the Liberian people has finally arrived.
Long live the Speaker. Long live the Speaker. Thank you.
As anticipated, the dreadful warlord who captured and killed the former President Samuel Doe on camera, Prince Johnson accused President Boakai, whom he vigorously campaigned for, of betraying him.
We cannot promote you and give you a leadership of the nation at the age of 79, and you bring in people having secret meetings with them to try to impose something on Liberia. You're targeting me, but the people who are listening every day, they know that you're going to go after them too.
For now, it remains unclear as to whether or not the Liberian Senate will concur with the House on establishing a court. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
Meanwhile, a law amending the Beninese Electoral Code has been passed in a vote by members of parliament, with 79 MPs voting in favor and 28 others against the amendment. The bill, aligned with President Patrice Talon's desire, mainly concerns the criteria for candidacy in the 2026 presidential elections intended to intensify political competition. The new law also paves the way for changes in the sponsorship requirements for presidential candidates. Henceforth, to contest in Benin's presidential election, each presidential and vice presidential candidate must gather the support of at least 15% of the deputies and mayors from at least 3/5 of the electoral constituencies. This represents a 5% increase on the previous legislation. In addition, a deputy or mayor may now only sponsor a candidate from his or her political party unless there is a prior governance agreement between the two parties. The amendment was considered despite rising political tension with some political parties and civil groups opposed to the changes.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Guinea, the transitional president, General Mamadi Doumbouya, has revealed a new government structure for the remaining transition period. However, in a decree signed on Tuesday, the new operational layout is not any different from the previously dissolved government led by former Prime Minister Bernard Goumou. The decree informed that the newly appointed Prime Minister Amadou Uba teams would include a total of 27 ministerial portfolios with 2 general secretaries. The general secretariats established within the government are the Government Secretariat and that of Religious Affairs. Recall that the dissolution of the previous government led by Bernard Goumou followed an internal crisis between the Prime Minister and his Minister of Justice, Alfonso Charles Wright. Disagreements between the two government officials erupted when the Justice Minister called for prosecutions against certain state agents. We now head to Mali, where 2 soldiers held captive by the JNIM terrorist group led by Iyad Ag Ghali are appealing to the transitional authorities for their release. A video released on Monday by JNIM showcased the 2 Malian soldiers who were captured during the Kuala attack in Kulikoro, the southern region of the country. The armed group asserts that approximately 30 Malian soldiers were killed in the said attack. As of Giberica reports, the Malian Military Command has not yet provided any details regarding the casualties.
In a video circulated by the armed group, Malian soldiers Sergeant Sidi Fane and Mohamed Dagasi visibly distressed shared their names and service numbers in Bambara. They recount a terrorist attack on their detachment last Wednesday in Kuala, Kulikoro region, where they were providing security for road construction. The soldiers claim to be injured and appeal for authorities to secure their release. They assert that they are being treated well and urge the country's main Islamic leaders to mediate with the authorities on their behalf. The support group for Islam and Muslims demands the release of its fighters from Malian prisons in exchange for the soldiers' release. The Malian authorities and military hierarchy have not responded to the video. Details of the attack's outcome remain undisclosed, with conflicting reports on casualties. The JNIM, claiming responsibility, states that around 30 Malian soldiers were killed, while the exact number of soldiers held hostage by the JNIM is still unknown.
Giberica voiced a report filed in by WDL's Aliu Cham in Bamako. Meanwhile, the United Nations Human Rights Commission is calling on Mali to ensure accountability in the country. In a media briefing on Tuesday, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said the human rights situation in Mali remains very worrying, with violations and abuses almost doubling in 2023 compared to 2022. According to him, these increases coincided with the resumption of hostilities between the security forces and armed groups following the withdrawal of MINUSMA.
In Mali, the human rights situation remains very worrying, with violations and abuses almost doubling in 2023 compared to 2022. This increase coincided with the resumption of hostilities between the security forces and armed groups following the withdrawal of MINUSMA. 2 armed groups are in control of significant territory in the border area with Burkina Faso and Niger, as well as in the region of Timbuktu, parts of which have been under siege since August last year, exacerbating threats to the rights of women and girls in particular. While armed groups are responsible for the majority of serious violations, we have also received credible allegations of serious violations by Malian forces, sometimes accompanied by foreign military personnel. I call on Mali to ensure accountability.
That was the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, speaking there. Still in the Sahel, the Burkinabe authorities have officially admitted to detaining Matri Guy Have Kam, the famous lawyer and leader of a civil society organization in Burkina Faso. Guy Have Kam, who was reported to have been kidnapped on the night of Wednesday, January 24 to Thursday, January 25, according to a press release by his organization. David Vincent has more details in this report.
During a hearing on Tuesday at the Administrative Court of the capital, Ouagadougou, a judicial agent of the state admitted that the ex-founder of Citizen Balai and figure of the Burkinabe Bar was being detained by the state authorities. The revelation comes 6 weeks after Guy Edwe Kam's family and organization reported that he had been kidnapped by unknown persons on civilian clothes on January 24. The state agent also affirmed that the former co-founder of Balai Citoyen and leader of the Sense political movement was arrested because he was suspected of undermining state security, an accusation that remains to be substantiated according to Mr. Kam's lawyers. They say despite the assertions of the judicial agent, neither of the 2 high courts is aware of criminal procedure for such accusations. For his part, the state agent refused to say precisely where Guy Edwe Kam was being held. Mr. Farama, a lawyer for the imprisoned colleague, denounced several procedural violations and demanded that Burkinabe law be respected. In the meantime, a complaint for arbitrary arrest and detention has been filed. The deliberations are to be known on Thursday, March 7.
David Vincent filed that report. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar and on our partner stations across the South region. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Senegal braces for protests as civil society opposes controversial amnesty bill impacting political demonstrations. Guinea's interim president, General Doumbouya, announces a new government structure. United Nations calls on Malian Transitional Authority to ensure accountability amidst escalating human rights concerns. And still ahead, in Ghana, criticism trails Finance Ministry stands on human, sexual and family values bill. We also have the guest interview, press review and sports update. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
We are streaming live on WADR.org, YouTube and Facebook. Economist and Dean of the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, has rebuked the Finance Ministry over its concerns that the Human, Sexual and Family Values Bill, which prohibits LGBTQ activities when signed into law, will have revenue implications for the country. The Finance Ministry had, in a communique to President Nana Akufo-Addo, urged him not to assent to the bill because it could limit funding from the Bretton Woods institutions and the World Bank and could have dire consequences on the country's budget. WDR's Accra correspondent Nadidi Tete reports.
During the president's address to the diplomatic corps, the president stated that he would postpone the signing of the contentious bill into law until the Supreme Court gives its verdict on the matter.
I have learned that a challenge has been mounted at the Supreme Court by a concerned citizen to the constitutionality of the proposed legislation. In the circumstances, it would be as well for all of us to hold our hands and await the decision of the court before any action is taken.
The bill's approval has faced significant backlash, particularly from the diplomatic community, with some threatening to withdraw funding if it's signed into law. Additionally, the Finance Ministry urged the President not to sign the bill as it will have dire implications for the economy. Economist and Dean of the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, said the fears of the Finance Ministry are without cogent reason and only meant to cause panic. He believes that the threat should rather challenge the country to be self-reliant.
Let's use this to signal that we can be independent when it comes to managing our economy. We may not need their resources. Even at all, go into the 2024 budget and then look at the grants that we are targeting. It's just about 3.3% of our GDP. So it tells you that it's just a microcosm of, what we do in the country. So we may do without them. So I don't see the reason why we should get ourselves worried. And again, like I was saying, the IMF program never talked about LGBTQ.
In addition, private legal practitioner Kwame Jantua says African countries like Uganda have passed laws against LGBT practice, are still receiving Western support, hence no need to panic over possible sanction as a result of the bill. Meanwhile, political scientist and founding member of the governing NPP, Dr. Mwakoba, says the president's decision is right.
I agree with the president, not on the point that we start to lose some money. No, because the bill is not properly written. Laws cannot be written by violating other laws. That is what we have done.
Our report was filed in by our Accra correspondent, Nadidi Tete. Back to Senegal, where customs officials on Tuesday announced a major drug seizure in the Kaolack region with a street value of over 819 million CFA francs. The seizure in Ker Ayip by the Customs Commercial Brigade included 11 kilograms of pure cocaine and 200 grams of cannabis hidden in a vehicle with a foreign registration number. Officials say the toll couriers, who are non-nationals, have been detained and helping with investigations. Abdullah Hassan completes the story.
The drug seizure, according to a customs statement, was made possible through a vehicle mobile scanner at about 1 p.m. on Tuesday after the occupants of the car transporting the narcotics displayed suspicious behaviors. The scan revealed hidden consignment in the doors of the car, which officials later discovered to be 11 packages of a substance with a total weight of 11 kilograms. The Operational Directorate for the Control and Repression of Illicit Trafficking and Surveillance carried out a test of the substances and confirmed that the drug seized was pure cocaine. 20 TNT tablets were also found during the search. The Director General of Customs, Dr. Ombai Njai, described the record seizure as a concrete illustration of remobilization of troops and the provision of adequate equipment in the fight against illicit trafficking and transnational organized crime. The Senegalese customs, caught in an increasing wave of drug seizures, acknowledged the acquisition of mobile scanners to strengthen its control mechanisms. These cutting-edge technologies make it possible to detect drugs and other illicit products more effectively and contribute to the security of the country's borders. The Senegalese customs reiterated its commitment to fight drug trafficking, protect the population, and confront emerging security threats.
Abdullah Hassan reporting there.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Well, let's head now to Banjul as we join Sankli Janko for the newspaper review.
Hello there, it's a beautiful sunny Wednesday afternoon here in Banjul, and let's bring you up to date with the latest news making rounds on the daily newspapers in the tiny West African country. My name is Sankule Janko, and let's begin today's press review with the Fourier newspaper, and the lead story on the Fourier newspaper reads, Teacher admits raping his student, with the photo of Magistrate Fatou Dabo Jarunga. Legislative Committee recommends rent charges be based on standard of property. This other one reads, former CEO Cisse says Jack not compliant with financial manual. WAIC, that is the West African Examination Council, says parents condone examination malpractice. GRA, that is the Gambia Revenue Authority's non-tax revenue, increased to 1.72 billion. That's according to Finance Minister Sidi Keita. And finally, on the foreign newspaper, this one reads, Gambian NAMS expedite ratification of Malabo Convention on cybersecurity, personal data protection. Now, let's move on to the Point newspaper for today. And the lead story on the Point newspaper reads, AFDB, that is African Development Bank, approves $12 million to boost Gambia's food security. That's the lead story on the Point newspaper. This other one reads, deputies adopt report on 2024 rent bill with amendments. There is no evidence to prove people are dying of kush. That is according to DLEAG, that is the Drug Law Enforcement Agency of the Gambia. That was detected in the Gambia in 2021, and it is believed to be imported into the country from Sierra Leone. EFSTH, that is Edward Francis Small Teaching Hospital, the biggest referral hospital in the country, and GT Bank partners to boost hospital's revenue base. This is not fair, Sonko's lawyer to plea for acquittal. Let's take a look at the final newspaper of today, and that is the Standard newspaper. And the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads, 4 ministries alone spend $954 million on salaries orders. Goodness me. Murder suspect breaks down in court, claims no intention to kill. Court to admit or reject alleged PRU suitors' statements. That's another story on the Standard newspaper. Quranic teacher charges plea after initially pleading guilty to rape. British High Commissioner meets Dabo. Of course, Dabo is the opposition leader of the Gambia. Moroccan mayor hails partnership with BCC, and that is the Banjul City Council. And finally, for today, Passive deputies boycott meeting on amnesty bill. These are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies. And it's back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Uncle Janko, with the newspaper review there.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
For our guest interview this afternoon, we take you back to our first story on the ongoing debate on the amnesty bill, which was proposed after a 2-day national dialogue here in Senegal. Now, this bill outside the parliament has continued to face stiff opposition from coalition groups like the Sunni Election Platform, who are demanding justice and the presidential election to be held before April 2. Our guest, Madam Mamjaran Jaya Sobel, is an expert in international relations and governance and a member of the Arsunu election platform in Senegal.
We are still trying to find out the reason of this division, but we will just take this opportunity to make a call for action to all the members of opposition to reject this bill in behalf of the Senegalese population. Because the member of parliament, they are in the assembly, they are in the parliament representing the people of Senegal, and hopefully they will reject this bill to contest for justice and for truth on behalf of the Senegalese people.
So what then would now happen if this bill is rejected, and what do you think should be the way forward?
We hope that the bill will be rejected, and if so, it will be just a confirmation of Senegalese greediness of Senegalese people and institutional greediness. And now we are all pending and we are waiting for what will happen in the next coming hours and days.
What is the opposition, the CSOs, the Arsuni election group, what are their demands? What are they demanding? What do they want?
Our demand is from now is still the same. Holding the election before the end of the mandate, notably before April before April 2, and also just put down this matter of amnesty bill. This is our two demands. It will be very difficult to build the peace without truth and to build the peace without justice. And I think that even the member of the opposition, they want this justice, to be clear with Senegalese people. So I hope that even the member of the opposition, they will ask for peace, for truth and justice.
That was Madam Mamjaran Jaya Sobel, an expert in international relations and governance and a member of the Arsunu election platform here in Senegal. And in Sport Brief, the Nigerian Football Federation has refuted reports on the appointment of Austin de Gravin as the interim head coach of the Nigerian national football team, the Super Eagles. The news was described by NFF as a joke taken too far, according to SoccerNet. Gravin, 58, has been NFF's technical director since 2020. Nigeria's national team head coach position is vacant after NFF decided not to extend the terms of OSIWA, whose contract with Nigeria ended in February 2024. Despite leading Nigeria to a bronze medal in the recent Africa Cup of Nations in Cote d'Ivoire, NFF objected against extending his contract. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Makuti and Maudaju for the technical assistance. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is the flagship gender program 50/50. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.